So goodpluck.com, goodpluck.com. Yeah, you can sign up for a box. You can also reach out to us on goodpluck.com or emailing me if you have any questions.
Also follow him on Instagram. I love the pictures.
Yeah, at goodpluckgrows. Chening. Yeah, like Channing Tatum.
And I just wanted to make sure I got that right. And your last name is Duker?
Duker, yeah.
Okay, Chening Duker. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and, being a part of this. I wear multiple hats, and I was really, really impressed with, your pitch at, the Bamboo Startup Story Night, kind of pitching the idea of good pluck. Good pluck grows, and I love that tagline. And I just wanted to know more about your story because I'm super into sustainability in my political roles. I'm a councilwoman and I work in the Michigan legislature, and I've really been pushing for more environmentally conscious legislation and setting up sustainability commissions. And so I have a YouTube channel that's called Making an Ernest Living, because my name is Ernestine, and it's all about how to, champion causes of, green living, sustainability, minimalism. I am a sometimes vegan. I will still eat eggs, and just making an impact and lessening the impact of our carbon footprint on the planet. So I was just like super excited to see that this was your business model and that you were, producing green and sustainable produce. So tell us a little bit more about you and your company.
Sure. So I guess I'll start with me. So I'm from the UK. That's where I was born, but I spent some time growing up in Ghana and Cameroon. And then I came here to Michigan about 7 years ago. And I'm by my trade, I'm a software engineer. So I spent a lot of the time working at companies like Duo Security, just a local cybersecurity company. I worked on the Google Payments team. So kind of in the tech space. And when I got to Michigan, I actually found it really hard to find certain foods that I really loved from back home and gave me a very strong connection. Because I believe food gives you a very strong connection to a place and it's very special to me. So that kind of fueled my interest in learning more about food and learning how to find really great food, no matter where you were. And so that kind of led to Good Pluck, and I can go into that story more if you're interested. But Good Pluck is essentially a way to get really great local food really easily, and sustainability is kind of the overarching kind of trend of what I'm doing. So I kind of skittered over a lot of pieces. If there's anything you want me to go into detail, I'd love to flesh.
Well, what
it out.
I wanted to know, was when I heard that accent, and I am a bit of an Anglophile, and I'm kind of nuts because I went to the UK specifically for the royal wedding when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle got married.
Oh wow!
I love the British royal family. Prince Harry was my favorite, and then I just love British culture and accents, and I love that the diaspora in the UK really is finding a voice, and I'm noticing that there are more conversations around Black Britons and just what people are trying to advocate for. I was actually a part of a panel in the UK, and a councillor, which is a city council person in the UK, invited me to be a part of this panel to just talk about Black voices, and I was actually really honored because I really don't know much about Black British history, and I think that's most of the world. So I was just fascinated. I'm okay, what brought him here to Michigan? What Michigan of all places, and Detroit? Why?
Well, I think I'm maybe similar to you in a way, in that I love to travel, and I love to explore. I think the more you travel, the more the different truths of people and perspectives you see, and so I think it's one of the best ways to learn. And my family is also spread out all across the world, right? So my father's family in Ghana, my mom's family in Cameroon was spread out across the UK and also some in America. And this kind of goes to your question, like a lot of our family came to either the UK or America to study since the schools were great. And in the same way, like I decided to travel to study. So I came to the University of Michigan. And yeah, it was just basically a great experience and seeing the difference in cultures and even the difference between the experience of being like Black British and the experience of being African American. It's like such wild differences and some similarities that it's really interesting to be here. So yeah, I love it.
Okay, so what part of the UK are you from originally?
I'm from North London, so I was born in a place called Edgware, but I lived very close by, I guess, in Barnet.
Okay, nice. I spent some time in London while I was there, but I really want to go to Cornwall. So, just kind of see some of these coastal cities and hear about these wonderful British beaches. But yeah. So, tell us about your business model. What do you hope to? Other than, wanting to replicate, having the experience of getting fresh produce that, in other places it's more plentiful. You'll get it easier. But in Detroit is known as a food desert. And, you're not going to always get fresh produce unless you're going to Whole Foods and spending like $7 to $8 for like 2 bananas. So, what do you want to be able to do with this model, and where do you see yourself expanding to, and what need will you be filling here in this market?
Yeah, so let me start off by just giving a very brief overview. Good Pluck is a local farm goods subscription service. So every week or every other week, whatever you decide, you're going to get a basket in like a reusable plastic tote of like all the best things that are growing. We do a 2-hour radius. So everything in that box by default has been grown within 2 hours of your location. Some of those are even inside the city in urban farms. So that happens every 2 weeks. The baskets are themselves completely customizable. So you can add things, you can remove things, and it works out about $35 a basket. The model behind that is based on 3 things. So I mentioned a couple of them, but one is that it's super local. Local food is actually pretty hard to source just for like general businesses. Like even when you go to Whole Foods or like any of the other markets around here, it's really hard to source local food because it's like affected by so much. It could rain one day and suddenly you don't have any blueberries, or a farmer's truck could break down and suddenly you don't have any collard greens. So focused on summers, and the farmers inside Detroit are small farmers. They're not the size where they're like supplying for like big contracts.
The truck, farmer's truck possibly breaking down because I think we froze.
Oh yeah, sorry. So local food is really hard to source. Let me know if my internet's bad. I can move to a different location. Local food is really hard to source. Random things can affect the supply of local food. Say like a truck breaking down, or kind of like the weather fluctuating. So you don't really see a lot of it in grocery stores. Our model is specifically meant to work with small farmers. And a lot of the farmers in Detroit are small. They're not like selling to grocery stores. Some of them don't even have the ability to like sell at a market. So we work with really tiny farms, which allows us to get produce that's really diverse, like different types of species of the same fruit. And it means that we can be really local, because there are loads of small farms that can't sell to grocery, that are kind of being overlooked by most of us, even though these farms are selling some of the best produce you'll find. It's like, it's no spray, it's all organic practices. They eat the food themselves, so they're invested in making it as best they can. We just don't get to see this food. To find this food, you have to go out to these farms and travel to each one of them and figure out what they're selling. And so our model is basically predicated. That's the work we do. We find out all these small farms and make it easy to join in the bounty of everything they're producing. The second thing is that it's a custom subscription. So we tried different business models, but the subscription, which is completely customizable. So you can pause it, you can skip it. It's very like pro-consumer. But the subscription allows us to say to a small farmer, hey, we have this many customers. They're going to be interested in buying like these greens. Can you grow some for us? Or it gives small farmers predictability, which is one of the hardest things about being a small farmer. You don't know if you plant a bunch of tomatoes and then you go to market and you realize everyone else has done the same thing. Your tomatoes could be worth nothing. Even some farms will, and we've seen this a lot during COVID when all the restaurants shut. A lot of farms just plow their vegetables over or let that field just go to compost if they can't find buyers for their food. And that is based on just not being able to predict how much they can sell and where the demand is. So that's on the farmer side, the big reason why we're focused on like, hey, this is a subscription and you're basically saying, I want to support local farms in this way. And then the last thing is it's as fresh as possible. So we basically coordinate with all the farms to pick up their produce from like common locations in the morning on one day of the week. So in Detroit, it's Saturday. And then we deliver immediately. So we kind of pack the orders and deliver them in the same day. There's no storage, there's no overnight. And this does two things. One, you can't really get produce fresher because a lot of these farmers are picking the produce like, the day before, especially when it's like greens or things like, broccoli. These things are being picked the night before that morning. And the fact that we're not storing it, we don't have to like necessarily refrigerate, also saves money in terms of efficiency. So when you look at maybe say similar companies like Hungry Harvest or Misfits Market that are using a traditional shipping provider to ship you the food, we're cutting down on the time to like when it's on your table. So it's those three things that kind of like form this unique business model. And I think, stop me if I'm talking too much, but the business model, each part of it is meant to enable people to get food in a way that's, much more sustainable than common methods, right? Like your food is traveling, less than 2 hours to get to you. It doesn't make sense in my mind to get something that you can grow where it's being grown.
But you were heading right into the question of sustainability, and that's something that I keep advocating for, like shop local, support local, and you're really doing good by the planet when you're not getting things that are having to, be flown from around the world. And when you can get Michigan honey versus honey made in Argentina, it's going to be better for just your tax base. It's going to be better for your community because you're funneling money back into your own community. It's an economic thing, but then it's also about the fact that you have an ecosystem that is thriving because you are, you're producing your own things. And another question that I actually had about how do you identify the farms that you work with or the organic produce that, so how do you identify these folks and say like, hey, you guys are growing strawberries and blueberries and we want that, work with us?
So we basically find all the farms we can and we look at what they're growing, how big they are, and how they grow it. Farms that are the best for us are small farms that are growing with organic practices that are local. So we literally find them either at markets or by going to their farm stands and ask them about their growing practices, and also to make sure that like Good Pluck is a good fit for them. Most of these farmers have the ability to produce, to plant more and to grow more, but they struggle to distribute their produce. Farmers can be constrained. Like farmers markets are actually really hard. It's like you wake up at like 5 a.m. and you're there until like 5 p.m. And it's a lot of like verbally it's like a lot of marketing, like, oh, what are these, how are these grown? It's also like it's also capital intensive, because you need to get the van, you need to drive it out, you need to pay for the stand. A lot of farmers just don't want to do this, right? It's more work than they can have. So to have a model where they can just drop off their produce and it's distributed for them really helps them out. So we're looking for farms where it's a good deal on both sides, and local, minimally processed or minimally not sprayed, or no minimally exactly, that sort of thing, which is actually easy to find, because a lot of these farms are eating their own produce.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty. And you know what? The funny thing is, I was always like, I'm going to sign up for Misfits Market. I'm going to sign up for, Imperfect Produce, because, but there's some, I don't know where their headquarters are, and I don't really know what I would be getting. And, to see that you're right here in the Metro Detroit area and so close, I'm like, okay, because I've been kind of vegan adjacent, and, I just think about the fact that you're harming the planet by we're having so many of these farms that don't have true regulation as to how we treat these animals. And I think a lot of friends, especially in the small business ecosystem, I notice have a lot of businesses that have to do with eating clean, focused on being conscious of what you put into your body, and community farming and things of that nature. So I'm beginning to see a rise in, just plant-based nutrition. So one of my friends, Lisa Smith, she's like the plant-based foodie, and she has these boot camps where she talks about, especially with the coronavirus, how there are a lot of zoonotic diseases that you don't necessarily know where these animals are coming into contact with other animals that are infected with things. And, so it's like some infected bat could come in contact with a pig, and then the pig comes in contact with even your lettuce and things like that. And so I think you can really avoid a lot of this spread of diseases when you're focusing locally, and you're really, supporting a farm that's doing that's really implementing safe practices, and they're not stuffing all of their cows and pigs into an overpacked little sunless hut, and then shipping them out, and just being cruel to the animals. And then you're not getting all of this pesticides and the sprays and things of that nature. So how much is sustainability, really a big part of your life, and how did that kind of impact what you wanted to do, in addition to bringing the types of foods that you wanted to see, based on, living in places where, fresh and natural foods are just a big part of, how you eat. How much was sustainability at the forefront of your mission?
I feel like entrepreneurs always have like an ulterior motive with their business. And I think that for me, I actually toyed with the idea of starting businesses that were like completely zero waste, or like enabling restaurants to use only returnable steel, cutlery. And so it's been like a very strong undercurrent. Yeah, exactly. Right. It's been a very strong undercurrent for me. Like in my life, I'm probably on a certain end of the sustainability thing, where I geek out about toothpaste tablets.
Me too. I just bought the Bite tablets, because
yes.
I'm just like, okay, I only carry this water bottle around. I don't drink out of the plastic. And, even with I did go to Starbucks one time, this month, and I just kept this, and I keep rinsing it out, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to kill the planet. And, I think this is something that millennials are really, really focused on. And, then when I have conversation with Gen Zers who are 20 something, it's even more important for them, so I think that environmentally conscious, being environmentally conscious is really important for us. And, we're looking into sustainable brands like Patagonia and, Fjallraven, where we're going to keep something forever, and it's going to be made out of, the best materials. So I'm actually glad that you mentioned like forcing restaurants to have compostable materials and, oh my gosh, that is, I feel like, okay, now I don't know. I want to brainstorm with you. I'm just like, we can really force folks to do
Yeah.
that. Like,
Yeah, there are some really cool ideas out there. Simply being able to, like, one of the things I'd love is, like, why can't I say, like, I'm buying lotion or whatever? Why can't I buy lotion in like a steel container that I can return and is reused or something like that?
right. I was looking for like, where is the nearest zero waste store? I keep
Mhm.
hearing about them, but there are none in this
There's
area,
yeah,
not even in like Chicago.
exactly. So I mean, like, this is going a bit off topic, but I'm gonna try and round it back to food. Uh, I started looking a lot into the food system and how to make it more sustainable. Um, and as you say, in our food system was made to feed a lot of people, and it did that well, but it did that by focusing on profit and yield, and so you get these huge farms where there are literally more than 1 million chickens in the same warehouse, right? And and people then maybe are surprised when, like, oh, it turns out like a lot of these chickens are sick, or there's infection being. It's much easier to be sustainable at a small scale, where like some of the economies of scale, like what is true for some companies when they get really big, things get easier and cheaper on a unit economic level, doesn't work the same when you're dealing with like living animals, right? You don't stuff 4 cows into like a box that's sized for 1 cow and expect it to work. So that's why the model is so focused on small farms. It's just because they find it much easier. It's much easier when you're baking, I don't know, 100 loaves of bread rather than 1 million loaves of bread to do things the right way. So part of that is like diversifying sources and being able to work with loads of small different farms rather than like super huge farms. But then part of the balance is that you have to make it efficient, because we can't do things the same way that we have been doing that has served like our traditional food system, because a lot of those things aren't sustainable. In answer to your question, sustainability is really important for me. I mean, like I even in my basement have like some composting worms that I've been playing around with, because I'm really interested in composting and gardening as well. So yeah, it's very inbuilt in the DNA of the company.
I just had an interview with, just an environmental advocate and adventurer, and Mr. Sustainability, Rob Greenfield. He's like really active on like YouTube, and he has lots of TED Talks where he talks about, just the impact of being zero waste. And he does a lot of these like eye-catching kind of things around, I'm going to wear all of my garbage for 30 days just to show you how much waste you produce and how heavy it's going to be walking around with this, or I'm going to do dumpster diving just to show you how much produce is actually waste. And we talked about that, and he's like, I would love to come to Detroit to help you with like things like community gardening and just making people aware that you can have your own composting areas. And before I became a councilwoman, my city council had just voted to end our recycling program. So now I'm like, okay, well, what are some alternatives, and how can we make the city more sustainable, considering that we don't have a way to reduce, reuse, and recycle? And it's like, well, we can just get educated on how to do it ourselves, and maybe be a little bit more creative, and look into just forcing the businesses that are still in the community here to adopt just some of the things that you talked about, and maybe even having our own version of a zero waste store and a swap program. So I'm actually really glad to talk about that. And that's why I wanted to interview you, and also to kind of highlight this business model. And I think more people should know about this. And so I want to get into our last question. So your company, like, what do you inspire more people to do? Do you want more people to just be more focused on local businesses and really supporting local farms, fresh farms, and eating healthy? And are you that person who's like, I gotta eat healthy, I gotta, be conscious of what I put into my body? And then also, what else do you want your company to make an impact on in the Metro Detroit area? So in other words, what's the future for your company?
Yeah. So let me see about. I I'm not someone who's, let's say, militant about any like everyone must do this. 100% of your food must be like, grown, 2 hours from where you live. But I think that you should make it easy to do the right thing. So I think that if my company could do something, it would make it easy for someone to say, like, you know what, I want to get 80% of what I eat from local farms, and I want that money to go mostly to those local farms, right? And this isn't necessarily to serve the people who are, way ahead of everyone else, and growing all their own food and all that stuff. This is for kind of like the regular people to just to make it easier to say, like, I'm committed to living my life in a certain way, maybe one that's more local or more sustainable. And this is kind of a way I would like this to be seen as, like, hey, this is a thing I can do. It's a commitment I can make. It's like kind of a set and forget. It's a subscription, but I'm never like bound to it. I can always pause it, stop it, change it whenever. So it's like supposed to lower the bar for people to get much healthier local food. It's kind of like, this is a lifestyle that a great that one of our customers might aspire to. So making it easier to do that is really like the key part of it. In terms of where we're going, so we're very new, and like starting this company, it was like I wanted to do everything. I literally wanted to do everything, but I had to kind of like focus down and say, like, if I want to do something really well, I got to start with, I'm literally just starting with produce, like fresh local produce, and make the experience for that perfect. But there are so many opportunities to do better in food. And that's why it's talking about like reusable or compostable containers for when you're eating out. I think, everyone gets food from like a range of places. Like, people will eat out, people will cook sometimes, especially with COVID. People will, kind of like maybe subscribe to something. All of these things could be done better.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And even when you go to the grocery stores, you're getting like tons and tons of plastic. Like you buy chicken, it's wrapped in plastic, and then it has a styrofoam like little pan, and then it has that weird little one with the synthetics inside of it that absorb the blood. And it's just, so many of these things. It's like, if we could really get back to the basics, it would, it would be more impactful for what we're doing with our food. So
yeah. I think long term, the impact I want to make, even in Detroit, like, so for what it's worth, I'm kind of like a Kroger Meijer level shopper. Like I drive out to Kroger when I was getting groceries. So this is like, I don't want to necessarily compromise on the food that I'm eating. But I'm also not at the point where I'm like, okay, I'm just buying my way out of this whole problem and going to eat only boutique, foods. So the impact I would like to make is just making it accessible to have great food. And I think that people don't realize how much great food is being grown in Michigan, and that it's not actually that inaccessible if you can find it. It's not actually that the idea that an apple that travels from like the west side of the country and is packaged and shipped and goes to a packaging facility, then goes to like a grocery store, then hangs out on a shelf for a while, then goes into your basket, then goes home. The idea that apple should be somehow like cheaper or more a more effective way of getting an apple than from going to like Detroit cider mill and getting apples from them. That blows my mind, but that's how the food system has kind of like created this reality. So the big goal of this business is to help reverse the trend, which doesn't make sense for us anymore.
It really
It might,
doesn't. It
yeah.
may have made sense in the 1950s when,
Mhm.
for example, there was a lot of need to, just stimulate the way that, every farmer was getting a share. And, there were these incentivized programs for you to, we had the surplus of this thing, or we have a surplus of milk, so therefore you should consume more, and we're going to send it to everybody. And it made sense at that time, and it was, to help bolster the economy. But now we're good, and it makes sense to kind of lean more local, especially when you look at things like, the rate of infectious diseases and zoonotic diseases that are rising. And then, to curtail things like, somebody's economy really suffering because you're not really investing locally, and everything's coming from Amazon, or everything's coming from Kroger. And, so it's really something that gets us back to, the way that, folks maybe in my grandparents' era would have, lived. They would have lived simply, they would have lived sustainably, they would have reused, and there wouldn't have been so much waste. And, this planned obsolescence, I think it also goes with the way we shop for food too. So it's really about just kind of thinking, just being smart about and intentional about the choices we make.
Mhm.
And I love having fresh produce, because it makes you realize, like, okay, I have to eat this, I have to,
Mhm.
and it's also about being healthy too. And I feel so much more energized when I'm eating fresh things, and when I'm eating something locally, I feel like powerful, as opposed to like sluggish or something. There are a lot of, vegan and plant-based things that are like processed, and they're just like all of these kind of burgers that are put together using all these different types of, but when you can make those things yourself. So I'm really glad that your model exists, and that you're out here doing this, and that, I really got to pick your brain and ask about the true nature of like the sustainability behind, just the model. Cause I'm like, it sounds like this is a company that's like really, really going to bat for, just protecting the planet. And it's true. It's true. It's like you're really doing good.
And just to add to something you mentioned there, I think that the reason historically, like why it's not been so clear about the kind of the impact of the food that we're eating, and how important where we get the food that we're eating is because nutrition is like a field of study that takes, literally decades to study, right? If you want to study how eating processed food affects someone, you have to wait like 50 years to see the results. And right now, there are studies being, that are finished that have like really great data on like processed foods are kind of like really hurting people, and we have great data on that. And so I see that like in choosing to get your food straight from the source and locally, whether that be by going to the farmer's market or whatever, I see it more as kind of like, this is your like self-given prescription for like the life you want to have, and the health you want to have. It's a health issue as well.
All right. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for being a part of this, and having this conversation with me. I want to continue to have these kind of conversations, and I hope that you can have such a successful business model that then you can pivot to kind of like zero waste. All right, we got it here in Michigan. Because I started. I have a video. It's like 6 sustainable swaps on YouTube, where I talked about how I bought shampoo bars and conditioner bars, and I'm looking for like lotion bars or something. But honestly, I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, I can just use coconut oil and shea butter. So it's really about like kind of like swapping out things like, having the toothpaste bites, and then just wearing, like, everything I wear is mostly thrifted, including like this sweater, and just isn't important.
That is I think one of the things that I haven't gone since coronavirus has a thing to thrift stores, but that is like something I super enjoyed, even in terms of like getting like fixing up a house. Like I love thrifting, so I cannot wait for this this pandemic to be over so I can go back to
Exactly.
getting all that
I
stuff.
would always find like another thing, it's really about the quality, because I'll find brands that are really focused on, the sustainability aspects of things, and, just kind of creating a product that's going to be meant to last. And, that's something like when I do buy things, I want to buy something that's going to be around for a really long time, and it's probably going to be an investment piece. So I think that's really important, as opposed to fast fashion and people just going out and buying things just for the heck of it. And shopping is not a hobby, and it shouldn't be, unless you're shopping local. And because I love makeup, and I have like all of these Detroit-based makeup brands, and a lot of times like they're going to be vegan and or focus on like makeup, doing a recycling kind of thing. I think that's a really big important part of just being more conscious. So yes, hopefully we can get back to thrifting. And well, you know what? Actually, I'm just gonna wrap up the recording part of this.
Okay. I mean, I could geek out about all of this all day.
Yes, exactly. So thank you so much for coming on here. And this has been my sustainability channel, Making an Ernest Living, or Living Ernestly. Honestly, I use the titles interchangeably. So Chening Duker of A Good Pluck. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and excited to collaborate more.